You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday, the 23rd of January. Labour Council leader caught in indecent act. African illegal let off by courts. Scottish Muslims targeted by anti-domestic violence campaign. 11-year-old Spanish boy fakes his own kidnapping. The Reverend Robert West in his mid-month talk. Texan who is anti-gun gets rescued by two men with guns. Mayor predicts Waco-style standoff in response to Obama gun confiscation. Thought for the day, a bluster of bullies. And finally, cold flurries in Florida. UK news. Labour Council leaders allegedly indecent act on another man in public. Gordon Matheson, Glasgow's council leader for the Labour Party, has been reported for indecent acts in a car in a public place. The acts were committed in the Cathcart area of the city where police spotted the pair. The Crown Prosecution Service said there was not enough evidence to convict. Mr Matheson, who has apologised to his civil partner for the indiscretion, may find his MSP hopes dashed by the incident. African Coast immigrant woman let off with prison sentence. Teobla Asue, 34, and her partner Laurent Ateaka were both illegally living in Britain. Laurent used his twin brother's identity so that Teobla could marry him, and both fraudulently lived and claimed benefits in the UK. While the scheming pair were organising the fraud, she was already carrying the first of his children. She'd lied to authorities in Britain in 2003, saying that she was forced into marriage to an old man who was the father of her unborn child. The judge gave her 40-month suspended sentence and called her excuses a pack of lies. She's been ordered to carry out 280 hours worth of unpaid work within 1 year. A World at 8 writer states, meanwhile the British public want to know when she and her illegal lover will be deported along with their children, or whether the British taxpayer will be paying theirs and their growing family's upkeep in the future. Domestic violence campaign targets Scottish Muslims. A new campaign asking Muslim men and women to speak out against domestic violence is being launched in Scotland. The Change This campaign wants people to report any violence they have seen or experienced. Muslim women's charity Amina will use Islamic teachings and an imam to challenge the misconception that Islam allows violence against women. The charity said it was aware of many cases where people use their religion in an attempt to justify violence. As part of the campaign, it will be going out and speaking to men and women about the issue. A World at 8 writer commented, "That should be well worth the effort, but it won't. Anything Amina finds will be kept away from the Change This people, which I presume is run by non-Muslims." European news. It is reported in the Telegraph that an 11-year-old Spanish boy faked his own kidnapping to miss school report dressed down by his parents. The boy, who has not been named, sent a text message to his father on Monday afternoon telling him he had been snatched off the street in his hometown of Ginjo de la Mia in the Spanish northwestern region of Galicia. When Papa called his son's mobile, his son told him how he had been grabbed outside their home by a man and bundled into the back of a blue Seat. The father, a policeman in his own hometown, immediately issued a nationwide alert, and the Guardia Civil colleagues swiftly set up roadblocks across the province. Even police authorities in Portugal were informed in case the supposed kidnappers had fled across the border. But it was reported that within 2 hours of raising the alert, the boy was discovered hiding in an empty flat belonging to the family after his father searched it on discovering its keys were missing from the usual place. A nationalist spokesman said, "I wonder where this child got the idea. It must be TV or video games, and I hope he doesn't ratchet up his game." Now I hand you over to the Reverend Robert West for his mid-month talk on Racism is Not What You've Been Told.
Hello, my name is the Reverend Robert West, and I am the Minister of Grace Covenant Fellowship in Holbeach in Lincolnshire. I am the moderator for the Christian Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and I am also the chaplain to the British Veterans Group of the British National Party. And I'm wanting to speak very, very briefly on behalf of my own political party this morning about a subject that is dear to everybody's hearts in Britain at the current time. I don't think that because you're educated, you have to act as if you're programmed. I don't think that because you're cultured, you have to give the impression that you're an idiot. Rather, I suggest that if we are educated and cultured, we need to think. And what I would like us to think about today is the fact, did you know racism is not what you have been told? And I'm reading from a leaflet that I authored a few years ago, done by the South Lincolnshire branch of the Christian Council of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So it's got a Lincolnshire bent to it, but I think it applies to the whole of the country. Recent events in South Lincolnshire and elsewhere in England have raised awareness about the issues of mass migration, multicultural divisions, excessive building and population overgrowth in this and in other parts of the country. These events have in turn heightened concerns about prejudice, bigotry and positive racial discrimination against the native population by developers, by gangmasters and by Labour propaganda in the schools and colleges, which is doing down our culture and identity. We here seek to inform local people about the shocking facts of mass immigration, and we seek to allay their fears about certain accusations which are made against them by persons who are poorly informed and who ought to know better. A great deal of misinformation is being put out about what racism is. The media talk as if racism is where you do not wish to throw your country away or let it go down the drain. But such a definition is rather perverse. We, in the Christian Council of Britain, certainly think so. Racism is in fact the exact reverse of what you have been told. Racism is where someone seeks to destroy, oppress, or subjugate a race or people in its own homeland, and not where you try to preserve your own culture and identity in what is, after all, your own country. Racism also includes denying that you are a people, but surely we, the English, who have lived here for centuries, are just as much a people as are all the other ethnic groups who have just come here. The English and the British surely do have the right to seek to preserve themselves and their identity and culture in their own country. That is not asking a great deal, is it? It is not the British people who are now colonising the Third World. Rather, it is the globe-trotting banksters and the super-rich who want to populate Britain with cheap labour from wherever just so that they can increase their short-term profit margin. The result is that the native Brit is being replaced in large chunks of his homeland and being displaced by the same process to the outer rim of his country and cities. Not very wise and not very Christian. Doesn't that make us the victims of racism at the hands of a massive tide of immigration? And it is now beginning to affect even the once quiet and peaceful areas of Lincolnshire and elsewhere. But how long will Lincolnshire remain tranquil and rural in the face of such a tidal wave coming soon near you? We are already seeing increased burdens on our countryside, schools, jobs, infrastructure, language services and police facilities. Not to mention inflation-busting increases in our council taxes to pay for the alleged benefit of all this enrichment. Certainly, it would be morally wrong to blame the mass wave of migration on the migrants and immigrants themselves, the comlings. They are just being used. They are just being used as cheap labour for those who already have too much. The only body really to blame are the politicians, who seem to lack both the insight and the foresight to avoid, as Enoch Powell said, foreseeable evils. The three main cringe parties, Labour, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives, or at least the Cameron branch of the Conservatives, present such a tidal wave as if it were enrichment, and will bully you with talk of racism if you are not convinced by such slick and ridiculous talk. Our answer to this is that they need to get a brain, and whilst they're at it, they need to get a backbone too. 70% of the British people want an end to this tidal wave, and over 55% of the black minority ethnic population agree with them, even though they are immigrants or the descendants of recent immigrants themselves. They can see, as well as we can, that Britain is full up and divided enough as it is. It is now time to say no to such a tidal wave, and to do our bit to make Britain our home once again. It is the only home we have got. This is the Christian thing to do. It is because of this that the Christian Council of Britain has stepped in to provide a decent and sensible answer. That answer must come from Christianity's great source book, the Holy Bible, and not from church leaders, however wise or however foolish they may be. The answer found in the Holy Bible is very clear and sensible. We should start to value our country and not throw it away. It is a precious gift from God, which is not to be thrown back at him, nor turned into a world waste paper basket for the ruin of all and everyone. We should certainly help foreigners where we can, but this is best done by helping them to make the most of their own countries, which are now independent. It should definitely not be at the cost of ruining or destroying our own country. This is the Christian thing to do. The Holy Bible is quite clear in both the Jewish or Hebrew Old Testament and the Christian New Testament that it is the will of God that we should live in our nations, and that each nation is to have its own country. This is for all peoples, including our own, the people who have made Britain what it is. Marxists and bigots and other ill-informed persons like to call this racism, not realizing that it is in fact the exact opposite. So, remember that the next time some ill-informed person tries to call you something nasty for being both decent, normal, reasonable and intelligent, they are the ones who best fit the bill for their own little name-calling, without them even realizing it. Not very clever, not very Christian. Relevant verses in the Holy Bible for you to read from the Old Testament would be Genesis chapter 10. Look at Genesis chapter 10 verses 5, 20 and 32. And a relevant passage for you to read from the New Testament would be from the Acts or Deeds of the Apostles and chapter 17, verses 26 and 27 in the New Testament. I'll let you go and get a Bible and read those verses for yourselves. It is not racist to oppose mass immigration. It is racist to impose it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend. A very informative view on a very emotive subject for us nationalists. World news. Texan doesn't own a firearm and says he doesn't believe in guns at all, but now he's grateful to a couple of other locals who didn't share his values. According to Houston area station KHOU 11, the man had just been victimised at gunpoint by a robber when a pair of Good Samaritans came to his rescue recently. Police say the criminal suspect, identified as Christopher Hutchins, who was canvassing a neighbourhood near the 2500 block of Wichita Street near Herman Park, had no clue what he got himself into when picking his target. In this case, the station reported the victim, Kevin Dorsey, had just walked back to his car from a bar round the corner and had not yet closed his car door one evening when a man alleged to be Hutchins, who was wearing all black and a ski mask, pulled a gun and put it to his chest. The suspect took Dorsey's wallet, cell phone and car keys. Following the robbery, Dorsey started running down the street, at which point he said two men in a Mercedes stopped and asked him what had happened. When he told them, the men in the car took off in pursuit of the suspect. When they caught up to him, they opened fire on him, Dorsey said. The suspect fired back, but in the end, the station reported, the two Samaritans won the gun battle and took him down. I don't believe in guns, said Dorsey. I don't own a gun. I'm totally at the mercy of my saviours. They obviously sent two angels to help me. These people protected me when I couldn't protect myself. A World Date reporter commented, And that, Mr Dorsey, is the sum total of taking away a people's choice which has been their mandate for well over 150 years. Which leads the world at 8:02. Mayor predicts Waco-style standoff in response to Obama gun confiscation. Expressing his opposition to the New York SAFE Act, Gloversville Mayor Dayton King has sensationally warned that any federal gun confiscation program could lead to a Waco-style standoff in rural areas of America. Most people are law-abiding citizens and may go ahead and sell those or turn those over, but if you're going to have a fraction of people that are going to take a stand, and I can just predict a Waco-style standoff in some rural areas, and it's not going to end well, Mayor King told Fox 23 News. During the Waco siege in April 1993, after failing to execute a search warrant against the Branch Davidians, federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms burned down the Mount Carmel Center, slaughtering 76 men, women and children. Christmas tree jihadists hope to murder tens of thousands of people. Portland, Oregon. Jurors who may have been studying the defendant in recent days at the federal terrorism trial here of 21-year-old Somali American named Mohammed Osman Mohammed have seen a thin, neatly dressed young man at the defence table who sometimes quietly confers with his lawyers. But on Tuesday they got a drastically different view as video and audio tapes secretly recorded by the FBI in 2010 revealed a sometimes bombastic, swaggering religious militant who said repeatedly he was willing to kill and die a martyr if needs be. In talking through a plan to explode a huge bomb here in Oregon's largest city, on one of the busiest and most festive nights of the year, the lighting of the downtown Christmas tree in a public square, packed with tens of thousands of people in late November 2010, Mr Mohammed said simply and coldly as the secret tape rolled, that would be a perfect time. Rape judge may face dismissal, ethics review. Indonesian judge Mohammed Daming Sanusi faces dismissal after joking some rape victims enjoy the experience. Daming made the remarks during an interview with an Indonesian parliamentary panel who are considering him as an appointee to Indonesia's Supreme Court. National Commission on Child Protection member Mohammed Ihsan wants Daming fired, saying, "We encourage the House to call on the Supreme Court to dismiss him from his current position. He doesn't have the right to make decisions that can affect the lives of others." Thought for the day, a bluster of bullies. Now bullying is not just a schoolyard pastime. It has become a national pastime on the websites and an international pastime with the Arab Springs uprising, and I have a new collective name for it, a bluster of bullies. It's well known that bullies per se only bully the weaker sections of society or the more vulnerable. They come in all shapes, sizes, ethnicities and religion. It is the era of the bully, and they have never had it so good, hiding behind multiculturalism and the politically correct brigade. In the case of large housing estates, both sink or otherwise, this bullying can be divided into sections, all of which the police can and do ignore. Those are defenceless challenged people who live in the midst of sink estates, governed by gangs, who can be both white or mixed race gangs and all as thick as planks. They hone in on the people who they can bully, like the case of the mother and her daughter who was a challenged person. It got so bad that she killed her daughter and then killed herself. The police simply did not respond, but also one can blame the neighbours who didn't help and the so-called social services people who are paid to look after vulnerable people and families. If Fiona Pilkington had been a Muslim or an immigrant, something would have been done before it was too late. There are many hidden cases involving vulnerable white people who have been driven to despair by bullying. In this day and age of CCTV cameras all over the place, and also the fact that we are the most photographed country in the world, why is this still going on? The British National Party's Marlene Guest has made a BNPTV film, which I found most distressing. This is one of the more serious faces of bullying and more prevalent in this country than we would like to think. It is racist and religious bullying, and it takes the form of mainly Muslim immigrants in the areas which they choose to colonise. This old lady has been subjected to verbal and physical bullying in and outside her own home for many years. The police just do the old palm off of giving a case number reference, and that is where it stays, on file. I believe we're in the process of getting CCTV footage to identify the perpetrators, but of course this lady knows exactly who they are, some of whom live next door to her. and have taken up her gatepost and replanted it on their side, so she can't rehang her gates to keep these bastards out and prevent them destroying her garden ornaments and cutting her TV lines and destroying her very lovely glass windows. This lady's problem is that she's lived in that house for many, many years, well before we had the enrichment and glory of hordes of Pakistani and Bangladeshi immigrants swamp her area. These houses look well made, and hers has 7 rooms, which makes it ideal for a very large Pakistani family or families to move in. The one next door obviously being identical. I gauged from the video that one of her neighbours, Muslim, had approached her with an offer. Although lacking the horse's head in the bed, the intimidation was the same. She was offered a world trip in exchange for her house. She would then come back and live in that property and, wait for it, pay rent to this man for the rest of her life, however long or short it may be, but odds are on it being slightly shorter than if she was younger, and then whoopee, he and his family would have yet another large well-built house in a neighbourhood they have colonised. Now, apart from anything else, this world trip fascinates me. Where would she go? Well, probably straight to Pakistan, and maybe back, or maybe not. Now, this sort of bullying is targeting English, vulnerable people, and it is happening all over England in areas that are unfortunate enough right next to or in the middle of immigrant ghettos, because that is what they are. They segregate themselves by choice, not necessity. We have successive governments exhorting us to welcome them, making no difference in our approach or handling of them and theirs, opening our education systems and much more, and yet these people, whilst taking all we have to offer, still withdraw into their own kind and grumble while doing so. Furthermore, they are in truth spreading out and displacing our own people from these areas with a form of racist bullying which is swept under the carpet, much like their sexual abuse of minors, which also takes place well outside their ghettos. We have the dangerous form of public bullying, which takes place in the media and with which television and the papers can alter the course of an entire country. With a news item or story in a paper repeatedly put in front of the public, very soon that opinion will be the public opinion. And we have seen the results in the Stephen Lawrence case, Princess Diana's death, the Arab Spring, which started in Iraq, the Palestinians and much more, which is adopted by members of the public who are armchair activists and opinionists. And they do, believe me, supply a strong lobby for the sheeples. Thankfully they rarely go out and vote because they think all politicians are the same, whereas the papers and TV of course are not. So we have one particular paper, the Mail, that gives out all the bad news on immigrants and immigration, as if there isn't any other sort, which there isn't. But do they welcome the sight of a solution to that problem? No. And if one voices it, one is immediately verbally bullied for being a racist, by the very people who carry that art to heights never previously imagined. Pot, kettle and black comes to mind. There is even a form of religious bullying on some websites, carrying usually a message from Islam. At least you don't have to go there, but it is interesting to see just how much Islamic propaganda is out there and what form it takes. Well, I was interested to see a page from the London School of Islamics, an educational trust at 63 Marjorie Park Road, London E79LD, established in 1981, which is just about the time the Asians were chucked out of Africa. This hypocritical missive more or less tells us that Muslims should take over the educational system in this country because their Muslim children are not being taught the ways of Islam. It highlights the story of Romeo and Juliet by our William Shakespeare as being a damaging subject because it advocates disobeying your parents and premarital relations. Now, in case you think I'm on an anti-Muslim rant, you could be right, but you could not accuse me of bullying. This sort of mindset from our Islamic friends is just that, a very clever form of mental bullying, and it has been going on for many years, in fact ever since the first one stepped on English soil. Don't kid yourselves that because many Muslims are polite and do not threaten to cut off our heads in public, that they do not follow the true path of Islam, because they do, and this form of gentle bullying is very dangerous because it works. This website also says that the Muslim children should be taught their language in our schools as the regional accents are not desirable. Well, call me a racist bully if you like, but I would have thought that with all these problems their children are having, why not simply go home to Pakistan, Bangladesh or India, or in fact any of the many places that are now predominantly Muslim, and get them in education there. Why? because for the most part all these bleatings on about how we educate them is laughable. They don't stay in their own countries because for the most part Islamic countries do not educate girls, and the boys are educated in religious schools. If this is not true, why do they come here in their thousands? This is not yet an Islamic country, and it never will be. Our education system is already at the top of the bullying tree, as are a number of things which Muslims do not like over here, mainly because of course we are not Muslim. Although there are certain things in the Islamic way of life that one can admire, they are just that, certain factors on lifestyle and family which are admirable, but they are Islamic and relate only to Muslims. We may be Christians in this country, albeit lapsed ones, but we are living on an island in northern Europe and are on a par geographically with Norway and Sweden, not North Africa. We are not, in our inherent culture, Islamic. We will never be Islamic. I, for one, intensely dislike this bluster of bullies from whatever ethnicity or religion they come from. Our authorities should take better care of our elderly and vulnerable people, even though in their eyes they no longer count, because in my eyes they do. Most of our own elderly have supported this country through 2 world wars in order to help pay for the vulnerable in our society, and should be treated with respect. You may not like the comparison, but if it was English white yobs or whole families bullying an old Muslim or African lady, the police and the public media bullies would be out in force, clamouring for justice. Now can you see why I'm angry over this? Our country has become a haven for these religious bullies who think they can take over our education system even though they have no right to even think it, mistreat the existing indigenous neighbours in their ghettos because they want their properties cheap, abuse and abduct our children and force their way of life and laws on us British. When will the message get through to all the politically correct and multiculturalist Marxist bullies? The message is we are too full as a country with alien peoples. We do not want any more. We need to address this form of racist and religious bullying with the proper means, the law, which needs to work for us, not against us, as is the norm nowadays. It must be said that if certain people do not like what they find over here, get them to leave. They will not be missed. Unless we stop all immigration very soon, especially from Muslim countries and Eastern Europe, all of our benefits, which we have worked hard for throughout many years, will vanish in a sea of third world rubbish. The era of the bluster of bullies is just the first wave. Put that with the health issues, the birth rate issues, and the way our country and its systems are being undermined, and very soon even the parasites we seek to appease will not be appeased. Bullies are perverse. Once they get what they want, they either move on to find another person to bully or simply ditch what they wanted in the first place. Our lesson should be learned and marked well. Nothing is what it at first seems. And finally, snow flurries in Florida. Police in Florida said they arrested a woman accused of using a pint of ice cream as a projectile weapon against a neighbour. Port St. Lucie police said the mother of Vanessa Peer, 19, told investigators she argued with her daughter about allowing an unknown friend to live in her bedroom, and the teenager went outside the home while continuing to shout arguments, they reported. The police report said a neighbour came outside to investigate the shouting and found Peer screaming bad words. She called him a female dog, told him to go inside his fornicating house and to get off her fornicating property, the arrest affidavit states. Peer allegedly threw a pint of ice cream at the neighbour, getting the frozen treat on his legs and shoes. Peer left the scene before police arrived, but she was arrested on January 15th on battery and criminal mischief charges. So there we are. It can snow in Florida as well. But what I really love is the unknown friend in her daughter's bedroom. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.